Hi, I'm Reggie Turner. I'm here with Jim Miller, and the FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. Tonight, the state of Maryland is at a crossroads. We have new laws on the books that are affecting our wallets and our everyday life, Jim.
Yes.
So let's kind of jump into what was decided this legislative session and how it's going to affect us.
And I know it's not on our list, but I would hope that all of our viewers are going to Pennsylvania or West Virginia to buy paint from now on with the new paint tax that was introduced April 1st. Going to the not-for-profit that is arguably not even a valid not-for-profit potentially, but...
Now, Jim, why are you going to bring that up? It's not on our list.
I don't know.
Why did you tee that one up?
Because I got to paint my house, and now I got to drive to the Sherwin-Williams in West Virginia.
A trip across the border, huh?
There you go.
All right. So, Jim, the first law is the Utility Relief Act. What it's supposed to do is provide ratepayers protections against sudden dramatic utility rate increases, creates a review requirements and low income safeguards against utility pricing spikes. BG&E and PepsiCo, their customers have been the ones that have been absorbing the majority of the rate increases. We both know that, energy cost or a kitchen table issue that we all have to discuss. The one thing that's hidden, and I've heard this in preservation circles this year, and it's a term that I haven't heard before, that is energy insecurity. Because if you start looking at energy costs as a proportion of your budget, especially if you're living in a house that is not very well insulated or something of that nature, those things can really wreck a budget. So when you start looking at low-income folks and where they may live, and maybe some of them live in a home that's not being upkept by the landlords or the owners of the property that they may have, these are things that are affecting families across the board. One of the things that I saw out there was like, your electric bill is a political document, right?
Yeah.
Every bill that's cut in Annapolis with a utility company is going to have some type of impact on you. So the first thing is, Jim, with this act, this relief act, do you see it as real protection, or is it just a press release?
It's a press release. I mean, it is. And the reality is, we've tried this before on gas and on other things, and it never works. We're creating, this is a large multi-part bill, 100 plus pages. It creates new programs, new oversight, burden. It's going to increase costs. It is. I don't see any way around it. And the $150, yeah, against what? Is that like the $2,000 we were going to save for the Obamacare?
Well, is the $150 offset by the bureaucracy that it creates?
Well, that's exactly right. I think it is. I mean, it's great in theory, but we need to stay out of this stuff. There are certain things that we need to regulate, no question in my mind. There are certain things that we need to stay out of. And quite frankly, had we not done some stupid things like try to push green energy before it was ready to be pushed, I'm all for green energy. Give me as much of it as we can make efficiently. But when you look at ethanol, for example, and it costs more to make a gallon of ethanol, it uses more resources to make a gallon of ethanol than the delta between burning ethanol and burning fossil fuel, what's the point?
The other question about this, who enforces this?
Well, that wasn't clear to me.
And does the agency have the funding? And will they go after utility companies? Like, what rabbit hole are we going down?
Well, they will go after utility companies. The other thing that is problematic to me in terms of what this does. Well, let me back up a second. The only thing that I like in this bill is the notion that it's going to put more emphasis on these large data centers for AI and so forth to pay for some of the infrastructure upgrades, because they are certainly a part of the problem in terms of why we have continued constraints and lack of energy resources.
From your reading of this bill, do you see that this legislation is strong enough to hold the line on data centers?
I will tell you, an article I read in the Washington Post doesn't necessarily believe that. I don't have a personal opinion. I think that's above my pay grade in terms of how that all works. But these energy companies are pretty good at finding their way around regulations. And I have no doubt that there's some hole they'll find in this one if they haven't already.
And their lobbyists spend a lot of time and money and resources with legislators to be able to maneuver these things. And I wonder how much this bill was even watered down, right?
Well, right.
From where it started.
It is a bipartisan compromise. So this had both Democratic and Republican support. So I guess you can say that from that perspective, it's less problematic than potentially others. But the $150
So wait a minute,
year,
that's groundbreaking. So we have Republican support on government controls of utilities?
apparently so.
We got to do some digging in regards to who those legislators are, right? Doesn't that go against free market principles?
Could be. That was an article in Maryland Matters, which if you haven't read, if our viewers haven't read, they should look at that. There's a lot of good articles there.
Yeah.
And Maryland Reporter as well is another good site.
Yeah.
That has some very specific Maryland information. But the other thing is $150 a year, that's not a lot of money.
No.
So this is a whole lot of ado for not a lot of money. And they say, well, the low-income households could see more than that. And yes, they could. But we would assume that the low-income households are not going to use near as much electricity as the high-income households, and therefore may not, have the.
Yeah, but I think that's where it gets a little tricky, because a lot of low-income households are going to have more in a household that's consuming energy, and then also the living conditions on which they're under. Again, if they're in a home that's not very well insulated,
Well, that's true.
old windows, doors, that type of thing. I do believe that it's going to hit them harder. It'll be interesting to see some real data once this is going. I'm not optimistic. I agree with what you said in regards to this is a press release.
Do you think, and even more so, do you think this addresses the underlying drivers and the root causes for?
No. This is surface. This is election year surface in regards to this is not a long-term solution to that. Because to me, the number one thing that Maryland should be focused on is being more competitive as a state, so that we have more people coming here than leaving.
And oh, by the way, this uses hundreds of millions in public funds to get this up and running and to monitor it.
So more taxpayer money
Yeah.
to monitor
Somebody's
this
gonna pay for
process. So is it a wash in regards to the millions going to put in to monitor it to basically give you $150 like what?
We're gonna increase your taxes by $300 a year to save you $150 in energy costs.
But you won't be paying attention to that. You'll be paying to the to the headline because politicians can go around and say we gave you energy relief.
Right.
All right, Jim, I think we've beat that one up enough. Law number 2 we want to look at is, and I think we got enough time to cover this one, Jim, Short-Term Rental Safety Act. It imposes safety and registration requirements on Airbnb and verbal-style rentals, including licensing, inspection, insurance requirements, and potentially neighborhood notifications. It affects homeowners that are supplementing their income through short-term rentals. It affects neighbors dealing with transient traffic noise, parties, and it intersects with housing affordability. Your neighbor's Airbnb now is a regulated business, or is it punishing working class folks for trying to economically survive and make additional income? How do you see that?
Well, I think that, I think there are some parts of it actually in this one that are good.
Yeah.
For example, the requirement for smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, fire extinguishers, evacuation plans, emergency numbers, things that you might routinely see in larger properties that are doing short-term rentals, hotels, and so forth that you may not see in the Airbnb. So I think from that perspective, it's actually good. There is a requirement for local inspection and reporting. So what is the cost of that, and who carries that out?
There's some protection for you and Terrence in there as well, right? If your neighbors in your respective neighborhoods wanted to rent out the mansion next to your mansion and host a party, right? There's some reporting and there's some mechanisms in there to report to basically protect those that are in the neighborhood.
Well, that's true. Luckily, the local municipalities still control zoning, licensing, caps, restrictions, those types of things. So I don't think that my neighboring mansion, all 1,300 square feet of it, is going to be affected. I mean, again, from my perspective, the big pro is that the basic uniform fire and safety standards are now codified in regulation.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
So it seems like a balance. So the question I would have for you is, do you see this as really about safety, or do you think it's the hotel industry trying to protect their turf?
Well, maybe a little both.
They're both, right?
I think it is about safety.
Yeah.
And I think the benefit that I see is the safety piece. I think that if you're going to operate an Airbnb, the safety issues are something you should address without needing a regulation to tell you that, right? That should be, Airbnb 101, so to speak.
And their competition is the hotels who do have heavier regulation.
Exactly. The other thing this does that I do like is it potentially levels the playing field and eliminates the patchwork of local laws that address some of these issues that are now covered by state regulation.
Yeah.
So that's the other benefit. And frankly, one could argue if you put this regulation in place and you do level the playing field and you do up the level of safety and elements that are associated with these, it could be a good thing for our tourism.
Right.
So, who knows?
Right. All right, Jim, I think we have about 3 other laws, or two or three other laws that we want to cover, but let's take a quick break.
Let's take a quick break.
Come back and talk about what the state's doing. All right. Stay with us, and we'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. We're jumping right back in some of the new Maryland state laws that are affecting us all. Jim, in regards to what's next on our list, we have mental health insurance expansion. And what it does, it requires insurance plans to provide more equitable coverage for mental health services, closing long-standing gaps between mental and physical health coverage parity. We do have a mental health crisis in this country.
We do.
That mental health crisis drives a lot of the addictions that we have in our community. So from that standpoint, I see that is a stronger thing. And our mental health crisis accelerated post-COVID, coming out of that. And millions of Marylanders are paying out of pocket for therapy because it's denied by their insurance company. So that's some of the things. And it covers addiction treatment access as well within there. So what say you, Jim?
Well, I say 2 things. Number one, historically, Maryland has been in the forefront of trying to put additional caveats in regulation for insurance. Well before it was ever a thing nationally, Maryland had rules that protected people against pre-existing conditions,
Yeah.
right? And that's just one example of, I think, many. And so from that perspective, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think mental health, addressing mental health issues solves other potential problems, even criminal problems. You know, if you think about the fact that there are many, many people, a great and growing number of professionals that believe that addiction, it should be treated as a medical issue, not as much as a crime. Now, if you're out selling, you know, heroin and stuff like that, then yes, it's a crime. But if you're addicted, it should be, there are a lot of people that believe that it should be treated as a health issue.
Yeah.
And to the extent that this covers that, I think that would be good. It does expand access to therapy. It expands access to crisis services. So, I mean, I think there are some potentially, there's some potential benefits to this. And also, it requires insurers to provide more detail and more transparency in terms of coverage decisions, denials, and provider networks.
I just think if we expand out, right? Because sometimes, like, when something becomes a norm, you don't question the norm. But if we expand out, if you think about this, insurance company says, okay, you break your leg, we'll cover that. But if your mind is broken,
Right.
that's a luxury, and we're going to find a reason not to cover it. Now, this law says that's supposed to end, but everything with any law is with enforcement, right? How strong is the enforcement mechanism going to be
Yeah.
to ensure that for Marylanders?
Well, and then the other question is, and just like the energy companies that we talked about earlier, the insurance companies know how to turn a buck.
They do.
So is this going to
And they know how to lobby.
Yeah, is this going to increase insurance premiums in the state of Maryland? It is going to potentially be a higher cost for insurers. And of course, you know, those costs, they said, the article said may be passed on to the consumers. No, I would beg to differ. They will be passed on to consumers.
I mean, when we look at this law and we think about it, you know, normally it is those that are of lower income that are not able to pay out of pocket for these services, so they forego.
Right.
They forego for receiving them. So it does stand that it looks like this law is trying to decrease that disparity.
But
however,
go ahead.
to do so, somebody's going to have to pay.
Right.
Right.
Well, and then there's also the element of mental health is a very subjective thing, and we all have different definitions of what a bad day is, right? And so it brings about the question of potential overutilization. I have a hangnail, I've got to go see the therapist.
Right.
So, and of course that will drive up costs too, because that drives up
or you have a body image issue and and it's going to pay for a facelift. Like,
that's exactly right.
Well, like what rabbit hole are we going to go down?
Yeah.
What mechanisms are going to be in place to kind of protect against waste, fraud, and abuse?
Right. All these years I thought it was the washing machine that was shrinking my clothes. It's actually the refrigerator.
All the dinners at runways.
Right, exactly, yeah, exactly. And here's the other thing. We already have a provider shortage in the mental health area.
Yeah.
And is this going to exacerbate that situation?
Good question. Because there are always unintended consequences.
Right.
These
and oh, by the way, the cost to implement this for insurers could be significant. They're going to have to update systems. They're going to have to track parity compliance. They're going to have to put reporting mechanisms in, all of which is going to jack up the cost.
Yeah.
here's the thing. I suspect that insurance companies will pay for whatever we want them to pay for as long as we pay them back for it. They got to make a profit, right?
They do have to make a profit.
So
These are for-profit institutions.
that's right. This is not a hobby.
All right, Jim, the last law that we have here is the predatory pricing protections. It targets price gouging and predatory price practices, particularly during emergencies or in markets where consumers have limited choices. Directly then tied to, inflation frustration, targets corporate behavior, not individual consumers. May cover rental markets, essential goods, groceries, and specific industries. In the instance that I can think of recently is gas prices went up as soon as we went to war,
Right.
right?
Before anything was shut down.
Yes, yes.
And they're not going to come down near as fast
They're
when
not
it's
going to
resolved.
No, it's not. So, that's the thing. So, when egg prices, cost $8 and rent went up 30% in the last 2 years, like, there was no economic relief for people.
Yeah. It also, from a positive perspective, it addresses the issue of surge pricing. And there was a fast food restaurant, I want to say it was Wendy's, but don't quote me on that at one point said, that burger cost $3 at 7:30 at night, but it costs $5 at noon.
Right.
And, that was a very popular thing, not just among that particular, and again, I don't know that it's Wendy's, so don't
We
quote.
call that dynamic pricing, right?
Right.
Based on
Surge pricing, right.
Based on,
And, we see that right now on toll roads, right? If you get on whatever the Virginia toll road is, if you're there at 8 o'clock at night, it's $3. If you're there at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's 60.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with, are we going to stop that on subways? Because they have surge pricing, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. The supporters say that it increases transparency and predictability. That's probably true. The other thing that it does is it stops companies from, it increases data privacy. So it stops some forms of disclosing shopping habits, location tracking, behavioral data, which I think is a positive thing.
In your reading of this, who legally defines predatory? And then the question becomes, is the definition of that strong enough to hold up in court against corporate entities with deep pockets?
Yeah.
Because I can imagine some of this will go, under legal challenges
Oh, I'm sure it will.
at some point.
Yeah.
And does the Attorney General's office truly have the capacity to keep up with this?
Well, they just need to hire 10 more people and increase our taxes by twice the amount of money we're going to save by saving on surge pricing.
So what you're doing is that you're making me depressed, because remember I said my number one issue is improving Maryland so that there's not outflow but inflow in regards to that. I'm not sure where we sit. Like, the headline of some of these bills sounds great.
Right.
But the enforcement and the cost.
Yeah. This is more a press release than it is.
So you're putting this as in the same category as our first topic.
Yes. Because here's the other reality. It could also, dynamic pricing enables things like flash sales. You remember Kmart and the blue light specials?
Dude.
Right? Targeted discounts.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, with AI and facial recognition, I walk into XYZ grocery
They're
store
going to overcharge you.
and they say, Miller's here. He always buys a 64-ounce Tropicana. Think that's going to go up $1.
Yeah, I can imagine the grocery stores will be raising the price of
Well, that's the other
the
thing.
popcorn when I come to the store.
But truly, if retailers can't adjust the price dynamically, and again, I know there's, and I say that within reason,
Yeah.
maybe they just raise their overall prices to reduce risk, and that doesn't serve anyone, right?
I think the thing is, just in regards to us discussing it here, it sounds like there'll be some court battles
Well, the other
when
thing
you
is,
start getting to enforcement and
well,
how you're defining predatory.
let me ask you this: how do you enforce it?
I don't know.
Right,
And what does enforcement
right.
look like? Like you must, is the Attorney General's office trying to determine how much you need to reduce the cost
Right.
of something? Like,
Show me your pricing system, is it algorithmic, right? I mean, what does that mean? I just, yeah. I mean, enforcement is going to be tough here. That's like saying having a law that says you have to honor your mother and father. How do you enforce that?
so in this last minute we have here, Jim, so we've covered 4 topics. We covered utility relief. We covered short-term rental safety act. We covered mental health insurance expansion, and we covered the predatory price protections. Which one of those 4 you feel has the best opportunity to be of positive, significant impact for Marylanders, and which one do you see as the worst?
Well, I think the notion of the short-term rental act has has the potential to be more positive for the population at large. In terms of Maryland residents, I'm not sure I would say any of these has an absolute. I think Utility Act is absolutely a press release.
Yeah.
I think this thing we talked about with the dynamic pricing is a press release, and I'm just not convinced that any of the other 3 would positively impact to any great degree.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to put a pin in those and check back next year to see how they're going.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break here. Stay with us. We'll have more of the flip side after the break. Waffle and chicken.
And by
Welcome back to the show. We're jumping right back into state politics. The Trone money. Can $5 million buy a comeback for David Trone?
yeah,
If we remember last election cycle,
he got
David
walloped
Trone ran for U.S. Senate
and got walloped.
and got walloped by Angela Also Brooks.
Yes.
So now he is coming back looking to represent Maryland Congressional District 6.
Take back his old seat.
Trying to take back his old seat, running against Congresswoman April Delaney.
Right.
Now, if in his Senate run, he spent over $60 million.
Including 13 million of personal funds.
Yeah. And if you also remember, even when he was running for MD6, he was spending exorbitant amounts of money
Right.
running from that. And that money was having a diminishing return because the last time that he won, I believe he beat Neil Perry by less than 10 points.
Yes, he did.
So he was getting a diminishing return on his money. Jim, he has plenty of money. He has a very successful business. Is this about legacy, service, or ego?
Well, it's about enlightened self-interest and ego. This is a potential investment for him because as much and I'm not just him. These show me a congressman, congresswoman that leaves Congress with less money than what they started. I would be hard pressed to name one. So I'm not saying this is a David Trone issue.
It's a system issue.
It's a system issue. But if you think about $60 million, so senators are up for re-election every 6 years, right? If you are going to do the math on that, that means that he's got to raise something like $27,000 a day for every day he would be in office in Senate to raise $60 million to pay for that campaign.
But what could $60 million directly invested in this district could have done?
That's exactly right. And multiply that by all of the districts in Maryland and in other states. I mean, this is why campaign finance reform is so important to me, because we are just, you want to talk about the rich getting richer. This is the people that are doing these campaign elements that he's spending his money with and others. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy numbers.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what the founders envisioned. Do you?
I don't believe so. It's not what I envision.
So he was in office representing Maryland 6 from 20. Well, when was he in? When did he?
2016-ish, 2018, somewhere in that range.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But he had what, two or three or four
terms? Yeah, because for them it's 2-year terms.
Right, 2-year terms.
Yeah.
And then he was a Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate and lost in the primary.
This is an interesting race, and I know that we're focused on Trone, and we're not talking about all the candidates tonight. I mean, obviously his main challenger is April Delaney.
Right.
And it was interesting because when he lost in the Senate, the majority of his staff went to work for Delaney, and then soon as Trone came back on the scene, the majority of that staff went back to Trone. So that's created some ugly dynamics relative to that. And if you just kind of watch on social media, Frederick County is kind of the battleground, right? In this election cycle, neither one of them have spent thus far. I'm sure they're going to be here. I think Trone is going to be launching his campaign office here. Trone is going to have probably a campaign office. Matter of fact, I believe he has, but he'll have an office in every county in the district.
Yeah.
I don't believe that Delaney has an office here.
I don't know.
I know that she had an office in Frederick.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Montgomery County, but I don't believe that she's had an office here in the past.
And frankly, she has not been here that much. At
No.
least not in my view.
No. She doesn't have much of a connection. Trone had.
You know what? If she wants the votes of the people in these counties, she should get a connection.
Well, the one issue that both of them have been trying to piggyback on has been the detention center issue. So they've been showing up at the protest. They've shown up in Williamsport outside the site and shot videos relative to that. Delaney kind of has a slight edge because she's sitting in the seat legislating, and Trone's kind of on the sidelines relative to that particular issue. But if you watch Trone's commercials, it's all about taking the fight to Trump. Like that's really his message. But I mean, I think if you look under the hood, what's really the difference between these two wealthy candidates, neither of which live in the district?
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. There's no difference, or very little difference.
Right. So I mean, it's pretty much a party fight of the wealthy wanting their way. So it's going to be interesting to see how this race goes. I believe the last independent poll that's been floated out and talked about on social media shows Delaney up somewhere between 10 and 13 points.
It's early.
It is early. But that's what we have right now, right? And I believe Trone has run some on his own independent polls that the Delaney camp has been kind of scoffing at, of basically saying that was him trying to manipulate the messaging relative to the race. But the thing is, Jim, if we look at history of Trone and his money, the more he spends, the worse he does. Now, the one thing, and you and I talked about this off air, if we look at the last campaign when he ran against also Brooks, there were some things there. I mean, because let's face it, African Americans are the core of the Democratic Party. And that campaign, he ran into some trouble because
A verbal gap.
a verbal gaffe that he had
And some
in a
public
house
missteps.
in a house hearing, and then he had commercials where he was suggesting that now Senator Alsor Brooks, you don't need someone with training wheels, condescending, talking about her candidacy. That rubbed a lot of African Americans the wrong way. And if you want to kind of look at what's the impact of that, look in Frederick County. Pretty much all the major politicos in Frederick County, the African American ones, have endorsed Delaney. So this race is going to be interesting. I think if you watch them both, obviously Frederick is the battleground, and we've been talking about Frederick being the battleground since, Parrott was running against him and talking about how Frederick goes. So I think you get a sense of how this race is going, kind of looking at Frederick County. A lot of the other non-African American politicos have endorsed Trone in Frederick County. So it's interesting to watch that mix going on. But what's going to be interesting to see, how much time are they going to come west?
Well, that's both of them. That's exactly
right, both
right.
of them.
And here's the question I have for you. Two questions, actually. If you think about the advantages and disadvantages, there are really two on each side. An advantage for Trone being a self-funded candidate is that he can get almost immediate name recognition. Well, number one, because he was previously in office, but number two, he can do heavy advertising and get his name out there quickly. But on the other side of that, every time we see a Trone ad, and we know it's self-funded, right? Anybody that's looking knows it's self-funded. Does that just tell us, well, there's another rich guy trying to buy an election?
The numbers have pointed to that, right? You spent $60 million in the last election and lost by over 10 points?
Yeah, he lost hard.
To also Brooks. Now, the demographics of that race were different as well. There was a lot more African-American voters. MD6 is more rural, so it's not that much of a concentration there. But it's going to be interesting to see. The demographic that I'm very interested in seeing when we get there is going to be women. Like, how do women feel about, like, Trone, you left the district. You abandoned us because you wanted bigger and better. You lost it, and now you want to come buy it back.
Right. Well, just like he wanted to buy a Senate seat.
Right.
And then the other double-edged sword is the notion, the advantage is the independent narratives. I don't use PACs, I don't use corporate donations, I'm not beholden to anyone but myself. But on the other side of that, if you do that without any grassroots enthusiasm or endorsements, you can't run a campaign, in my view, with smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. The other thing, like when you compare these two, like Trone is a better retail politician than Delaney, but she's gotten better. And I think the fact that she's in a fight this time, because last go around, she really didn't have any competition, right? Other than Joe Vogel, when that was kind of her strongest opposition there. But it's going to be really interesting. I know that there are some other candidates in the race, and we're not talking about them tonight. But I don't see them raising enough money to be visible enough for everyone in these rural districts to really know what they are and their messaging is. I know it's easier to get your message out there in the social media era, but I really don't see any traction right now. I mean, obviously we haven't had a great deal of polling, but I really don't see a lot of traction with those candidates to think that there's going to be a serious third person that's going to come into the race. And it'll be interesting, though, if some of the lesser-known candidates, if their campaigns aren't successful, will they stay in the race, or will they endorse one of them? So
I don't suspect Trone would endorse at this point.
no, I'm not talking about Trone. I'm talking about some of the lesser-known
Oh,
candidates
yeah,
we're
yeah,
not
I see
talking
what you're
about.
saying. Yeah.
Of if they say, I really don't have the resources. This is really not, this is not my time. Will they put their
But I like
supporters?
Delaney or I like Trone.
Yeah, will they step behind one of them?
Yeah.
Or will there be some side deals where someone tries to buy their support? Because, that's the world that we live in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that race is going to be interesting. History is telling us that Trone's money has been less effective. I don't know what about this campaign would make that different.
Yeah.
When you and your opponent, there's not much separation between your issues.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's a very good point. They both are about health care. They're both about minimum wage, federally mandated, education and workforce, criminal justice, social issues. They have a lot of the same issues or
Yeah.
same campaign positions.
All right, well, let's wrap it up on these folks. I'm sure we got plenty more months to talk about them and how that race is going and all the antics that'll come out of that, especially as they come west and try to, reestablish
Buy
their
our vote.
presence. Yeah, well, it's more of buying the politicians' votes who they believe have the influence over your vote.
Yeah.
But Jim, let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about our favorite topic in our communities these days: data centers.
Yeah.
Stay with us, and we'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. We're on to our last topic of the night, still talking about hot topics within our community. Our last topic tonight, Jim, is data centers. Now, obviously, Frederick is involved in that fight currently. I know.
Just around the corner.
Yep, and Berkeley County has a new data center project coming online. I have heard some whispers about a project that's on the table in our community, just has not been presented as of yet. And I'm sure all of our rural communities, especially those with a lot of land, are going to be dealing with this issue.
I think what we need to do is take that Williamsport facility
And turn it into a data
turn
center?
it into a data center run by illegal immigrants. The best of both worlds.
No one's illegal, Jim. No one's illegal in this world, Jim. But when it comes to data centers, and sometimes, I don't think about it all the way through in regards to like, what is a data center for? But every time we stream a TV show, every time we use ChatGPT, every time we check our bank account, every time the Pentagon runs a defense system, like it all flows through a data center.
Well, that's exactly right. The world is run from the cloud.
Yeah,
It just is.
yeah,
And, powering cloud computers, streaming banking, healthcare, and oh, by the way, AI. There are huge requirements for that from a data center perspective. And especially with AI and how AI works, it's going to grow exponentially
right.
as the different AI models take over.
Now, I had this conversation with someone in the last few weeks, and they were talking about technology that was coming afoot that would reduce the footprint of data centers. I don't know how close we are to any of that, but I hear that there's something out there. But let's kind of talk about pro and the con side. So on the pro side, we have tax revenues for local government, construction jobs, short term, tech sector permanent jobs, national security infrastructure, attracts ancillary businesses, and signals economic competitiveness. That's the pro side, right?
Right. And by the way, there's indirect job creation too.
Right.
With vendors, maintenance, logistics, and other services that they need.
Yeah. Now on the community concern side, and this is normally top of the list, the industrial cooling noise, which is 24 hours a day, light pollution in residential areas, enormous water consumption, which is a big deal for us, obviously. Catastrophic strain on the power grid, loss of farmland and green space permanently, property values, uncertainty near the site. And those are significant in our community, right? Because, you know, our green space, farmland has already been under attack in regards to warehousing, right? So if you think about when, because it's not if, when there is a data center proposed for our community, what do you think that conversation is going to look like, Jim?
Well, first of all, it doesn't need to be proposed for our community. If there's data centers in Frederick, I mean, we're on the same power grid as they are. And if the prices go up, because that's the argument, that prices are going to go up as a result of these data centers using a large amount of power, and there being shortages, they're going to go up for all of us.
But voters in Washington County don't really have a say.
No, they don't, and I'm not saying they do.
In Frederick.
I'm not saying they do, but yes. So I. Maybe this is short-sighted, and I hope it is. But I don't think that the average person, I didn't understand this until I started doing some research for this show today. I didn't understand all of the impact that these data centers potentially have.
Yeah.
It's significant.
Yeah.
So, this is not a little thing. And whether it's in Frederick County or Washington County, it's going to have an impact, or Berkeley County, or Allegheny County, or Franklin County, and we share electrical grid issues, but I think that the biggest thing that is going to concern local citizens, I could be wrong about this, is the aesthetic thing. These large windowless buildings built in the middle of what used to be a farmland.
I don't think that's the driver right now. I think in our community, yes, because we've heard those same complaints relative to the warehousing. But I think that water consumption and our already escalating utilities
Right.
are going to be major concerns.
Because, by the way, AI centers can use an AI data center can use as much electricity as a small to mid-sized city.
Right.
I mean, think about that.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
40,000 people or one data center.
Right. So here's a question I have for you. If a data center brings 50 permanent jobs, but it directly impacts 5,000 residents, is that a good trade?
No. And number one, I would be hard-pressed to figure out how it only impacts 5,000 residents.
Right.
In Washington County alone, which is not a huge county, we have 150,000 people, and I would argue that there's impact.
It's going to affect all of them.
It's going to affect all of them.
Yeah. Do you think that there should be like mandatory community benefit agreements for data centers to receive zoning approval?
I think, well, we do have the right to refuse zoning. Should we think about a special zoning element just for?
But it should be, I guess the question is, should there be agreements in regards to what the community impact is going to be? The community benefit, basically.
Yeah, so the Republican side of me wants to stay out of these things, and the
Republican side wants to stay out of private business.
Yeah, the Democratic side of me wants to say yes, absolutely they should. So I don't know about that one. I would have to think on that one a little bit. I think it sounds good in theory, but you know what? Having government take over healthcare sounds good in theory too, but we all know that that doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is a problem that is going to require the wisdom of Solomon, not the wisdom of Jim Miller, because there's a lot to unwrap here, and there's a lot that needs to be addressed and thought through. The unintended consequences alone are staggering. And I'm not sure that I know anyone, even experts on this, that have uncovered all of them.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that we can kind of bring home when we think about this election cycle, your next set of county commissioners are going to be making decisions on these type of things.
Yes, they are.
And if you have concerns relative, because I guess the word that's coming up now is transparency, because a lot of folks that have been protesting have been rubbed the wrong way relative to what they perceive as lack of transparency from the county commissioners when it came to the detention center. Well, when $1 billion deal comes to our community, when people are already complaining about, taxes and utilities and different things I think voters need to start thinking about who do you want at the table in regards to these negotiations on your behalf. I think that's going to be an important point because, again, when it comes to data centers in this community, it's not if, it's when.
Oh, I know it. And, the reality is what we should be concerned about as a community, and what all communities should be concerned about, is the return on investment.
Yeah.
And
But there's a balance, right? Because there's return on investment, but there's also some quality of life issues.
there is. And
Especially
there's environmental concerns.
right, if you're living near, right?
Yeah, there's environmental
facility.
concerns. And arguably, this stuff has the potential to become more compact. I mean, if you think about it,
Yeah.
the first computer system filled an entire room. Now this is big for a computer, right?
This is so much more powerful than those first
Right,
computers.
exactly. And so there's potential here that this could all miniaturize over time, which could be helpful. But then we're left with thousands of empty buildings that.
But the problem is the damage that you're doing to, our forestry.
Right.
In the interim.
Right. And then even if you take the building down, you got to go put the building, what's left of it, in the landfill, and that's not good either.
And what's the impact of that, of
Right.
filling the landfill?
Or build another facility to house illegal immigrants.
There you go again.
One never knows. The fact of the matter is, though, as long as we keep consuming digital content,
Right.
as long as we keep storing information in
We
the
want the
cloud.
digital content, but we don't want
Yeah,
the storage in our backyard.
right. That's exactly right. Well, it's like a prison. Yeah,
I want to get on social media and complain about that.
Right.
Right.
but I don't want that complaint to be traveling through a processor that's located
In my
3 miles
community.
down the road
Yeah.
in an AI data center.
Do it in somebody else's community.
That's exactly right.
But I want to enjoy the service.
Absolutely. So we are, a little, what's the word I'm looking for here? We
A little
have
hypocritical.
a little hypocritical.
Yeah.
We have two different requirements.
Yeah. Well, I know we're going to be back on this topic when something is introduced within our community, and we can talk more specifically about what that looks like and who's at the table negotiating and talking on our behalf, and what's the community input going to be. That's going to be key.
Yes, it is.
All right, Jim. Well, we did it without Terrence. He's not here. No paid time off. But
Empty chair.
Yeah, but we survived it.
We
Right?
did.
All right. Well, that is all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on X, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. But more importantly, join us again next week for another episode of